Hello and welcome to today's video. It is almost summertime. We grow our own strawberries, and when I say we, I mean Stanley. Last summer we hardly had to buy any strawberries from the store. We went out every morning and harvested our own berries, and I just had to show you. This is a sign that summer is almost here, and may it be a summer of health and happiness for all of us. Today's video is on spelling and vocabulary, and you may be wondering why I would be doing this at the end of the year. And it's because this may be the time at your school, like it is at mine, where we do our ordering of textbooks for the new year. In fact, it was exactly a year ago now that our instructional coach, Heather, came to me and asked me what I wanted to purchase for spelling. And without having any idea of what I wanted to do, I said I don't want to order any of the books that are traditionally used. And I just took a great leap of faith and had the hope that I would be able to think of something that would be rich and rewarding for me and my students. And I'm so thankful that I did, and it continues to evolve, and I just wanted to share it with you. At the beginning of the year, I start very small with just 5 words a week. And I know that the students coming to me have had many more words than that. You may even be giving your students 20 words a week. But I really want to start small because I want them to be very careful about which spelling words they use. I buy these composition books for them all. You probably buy them too for 50 cents at Target or Walmart at the beginning of the school year. And it is our job each week to select 5 vocabulary words, either from guided reading time, their dear time, or read aloud time, or even they can be words that they hear, even from their parents. And they write those 5 words down each week. So it'll say week 1 vocab. And they also have to define the words, and they can use their Chromebooks, a dictionary, or they can come to me also. It's especially exciting when it's a word that I don't even know the full definition of. And so we look it up together, and I get to learn right along with them. And I'm very particular in how I grade. I want the definitions to be short and sweet. I'm not asking for complete sentences or anything, but I do require that each of the words in the short and sweet definition be spelled properly. And then I take a vocabulary grade for that each week. What I've been doing recently, though, is I've been waiting until I have 2 weeks worth of vocabulary and then combining that into one grade, just so that I don't have so many things recorded in my grade book. And after we've done that for a time, when they feel both confident and competent, then we start selecting from this for their spelling. So let's say we've done this for 4 weeks or so. They have a bank of 20 words now. And now their job is to select 5 words that they're going to use to study for spelling. And I encourage them to, not choose the words that they already know how to spell, words that they really want to learn how to be proficient at in spelling them. And they either will highlight them or underline them in some way so that they know they've already used them, so that they won't repeat those words. Unless they don't learn it in that week, which is rare, then they can go back and repeat. So every student has a different list. And you may be wondering how in the world I manage that. How do I test? How do we assess that? Well, earlier in this year, I did a video on spelling partners and how to do small groups in your classroom. So you can go back. I'm sure Stanley will put a link in this video to that video, and I won't take the time to explain it. But that is the secret to success in this program. So once they've chosen their spelling words, I give them a special piece of paper, which I forgot to bring home for you to look at. But they write their words on this list and then turn them in on Monday, and then I correct them to make sure they're spelled properly so that they're not practicing them incorrectly all week long. And then I give it back to them. And sometime during the week, either Tuesday or Wednesday, I give them one activity to do. And I'm going to be, well, again, when I say I mean Stanley. This summer, he will put these on Teachers Pay Teachers for you so that if you are interested in using them, you can. But in one of them, we do other word forms. And, I think other word forms is something that the students had never given a lot of thought to. They know how to add ing and ies and, s to words, but other word forms was a new concept for them this year. So that has been great fun. So they write the word and 2 other word forms. So for example, for restaurant, Brandon couldn't think of a word for restaurant in another word form. His mom came up with restaurateur. I think his mom is one of my top parents in coming up with other word forms. The parents have even gotten involved in this because it's just so much fun. Receiving, reception. Other word forms just increase their vocabularies so greatly. But there are some words that just don't lend themselves to other word forms. And so on the back, they can do those words and a definition. So I don't have them do all definitions and all other word forms. It's an either or situation. Like they can do 6 of their words on here and then 4 with definitions. Another system that we use is the antonym and synonym of the words. So they'll write the word in the center and then an antonym or a synonym. And here we are in May, and there's still, which one is the antonym, which is the synonym, which is really funny because I've taught them that anti means not and against, but somehow that concept just hasn't compressed for all of them yet. And again, sometimes words don't have an exact fit for antonym and synonym. I remember one of my students earlier in the year wanted to choose Juno as a word. And I said, Juno, really? Are you sure you want that word? Are you going to use Juno a lot? And he said, no, I really like this word. It's cool. So who am I to argue? Who knows? That child may one day have a job in Juno. So, what is the opposite, the antonym of Juno? Well, I was trying to think, well, let's think of a place that has a very different climate from Juneau. And Eli piped up, Guam. Eli's from Guam. So that became our antonym for Juneau. So, there's some flexibility in how you do synonyms and antonyms. Then on Thursday, we do a practice test like, we always do, and then with our spelling partners, and then Friday the same with their spelling partners. And then I, of course, am encouraging them to use these words in their writing. And these are the words that end up on our word wall, which is a giant whiteboard. But I have to confess, at the beginning of the year, for many weeks, we were really faithful with our word wall. But here in the last several weeks, I've had to kind of put the word wall aside. I mean, there are still words on it, but it's not constantly changing and growing. And the reason for that is a good reason. Even though I'm sad that I'm not getting to use our word wall, we've gotten 3 new students towards the end of this year, and because of social distancing, the desks are pushed completely to the limits, and desks are right up against that word wall, and I just can't get to it. But I'd rather have Briella and Maxwell and Victoria than have access to my word wall. But hopefully when this pandemic is done and we are closer together, we will then again have access to word walls, which I truly believe in and are a great source to help students use these words in their writing. I can tell you that never before has there been any year that I or my students have had so much pleasure and joy from a spelling program. They are engaged, they are excited, and they want more and more. It's also become quite the teaching tool. Brandon was having trouble finding vocabulary words. He'd say things like, well, I know all the vocabulary words in here. And I said, okay, let me just read side by side with you. And so sharing his book, I just would look over his shoulder and read with him. And you can do that in small guided reading time or even during deer time. And whenever I'd come to an interesting word, I'd stop and say, do you know that word? And, no, let's keep going. Do you know this word? No. He had grown so accustomed to just reading over any word that he didn't know that he lost that ability to stop and say, oh, I don't know that word, I better look it up. And of course, we know that a student doesn't need to know every single vocabulary word in order to gain comprehension, but we also know that when they do stop to learn new vocabulary, their comprehension just increases. The Matthew effect. Have you heard of that? Where the rich just get richer. The rich in vocabulary get richer the more they study and the more they read. And it has really changed him. He said, it has made me a better reader. It has improved my reading. And now he's just, one of my most faithful at finding vocabulary words that he doesn't know. It also became an interesting thing for Madeline, who was coming to me. It felt like every few minutes, what is this word? What is this word? And I said, Madeline, let's do a little assessment right now. It's called the 5-finger assessment. Maybe you know it. You choose any page in a book, and when a student comes across a word that they don't know, they put a finger up. And if they come to 5 words, any 5 words on one page that they don't know, that's a little assessment to know that that book is a little too hard for them at this point. It doesn't mean they can't read it, but at this point, it's too hard for them. So I said, we're going to have to put this book away for now. It was Gordon Corman's What's His Face, and you can read this book later. That night, when I got home, I thought, I just, out of curiosity, want to see what reading level this is. So I looked it up to see what the guided reading level is. And sure enough, What's His Face is a 6th grade reading level book by the Fountains and Pinnell measure. And, I told her that the next morning. She goes, oh, that makes so much sense. It just wasn't the book that was ready for her at this time. You want your students to be making maybe 3 mistakes or 3 words that they don't know on any page, and that's kind of just the right fit. 3 or less, even 4 or less is still okay. I am always teaching my students about affixes and Greek and Latin roots. We take time to study those because we know that when they know the meanings of those roots, their vocabularies can increase. And our registrar, Missy, bought me a book recently, and I was so excited about it. It's called Greek and Latin Roots, and I'm sure my husband will put this in the link for you. It's by, her name is Trisha Callella. I'm hoping to make contact with her this summer. She teaches here in California. But it's a workbook that's not a workbook. Trust me, it's not endless worksheets. It's activities to go with teaching these roots. And the very first one that we did was ped. Now we all know, pedestrian, pedicure, but I had never thought before of peddler, someone who goes by foot door to door. Pedal, the way I make the bicycle work with my foot. And we recently took our standardized test, which is new this year. It's called the MAPS test. I have no experience with it. It's all on the computer. I can't even look at it in any way. And some of my students, Josiah and someone else had when it was done, they said, oh, it was Thomas and Josiah. They said, pedestrian and peddler were both in our MAPS test for reading, and those are some words that we had just studied. Then this week, we were looking at the word disease, and I had taught the students months ago about the meaning of the word dis, or the prefix dis, and Alexis said, wait, disease, does that mean you're not at ease? And I said, Alexis, child, I've never had that thought. Let's check, because, dis-ease, you're not at ease. I looked up the origin, and sure enough, it means lack of ease. Who knew? But by studying these words, our vocabularies are just exponentially growing. During the MAP test, I had a couple students, well, it was actually more like 5 of them, starting to pull out their composition books during the test and say, put that away, you can't have that out. I said, no, I'm not looking at it. I just want to show you, Mrs. Matsuda, look, my word, look. Then they're pointing at the screen on the computer and pointing to their composition books that their words that they had chosen showed up on the MAP test. And I've never seen, we've been taking the ITBS for, I don't know how, I took that when I was a little girl. I have never seen students engaged in a reading comprehension test like this because they were so excited because their words kept showing up And when it was all finished, Catherine raised her hand and she said, Mrs. Matsuda, there were 3 words on the map test that I didn't even know. Can I put those words in my composition book? Like, when does that happen? I was just one happy teacher during that whole time. Now, this came up several weeks ago. Liam said to me, he said, well, what happens if I've already, because we're at, 10 words now a week. What happens if I've already found my 10 words and I still am finding more words? And I said, well, just go on and add them on to the next week. And Jaden had already been doing that. He's far ahead in the weeks. And so I have 25 students, and don't be jealous and hate me that I only have 25 students. And next year I'll have 28. And again, don't hate me because I know there are many of you who have well over 30. And maybe I'll get to that point too someday. But of my 25 students, 15 of them are beyond the week that we're supposed to be in. We're in week 35 right now, and I have students who are all the way, and as I said, Jaden was the first one to do that. It started all with one book. It was the Mixed Up Files of Mrs. Basil E. Frankweiler. He found so many words in that book, and Alexis has made similar comments to me. She held up one book and she said, this book boosted me. It just boosted me with my vocabulary. But I have students who are 10, 12 weeks ahead in vocabulary. They can't stop. And it is my great desire that this is something that they will continue lifelong. Because it's done in something as simple as a journal like this, it is my hope that they will do this for always now. They will always stop to learn new vocabulary. Stanley has gotten involved in the last few weeks in this situation with me, and I've invited him to give you his perspective of our spelling plan. Hi, Stanley. Welcome.
Thanks for the invitation.
Anytime.
Happy to be here.
Glad you're here. Tell our friends about your involvement in helping me with spelling recently.
Okay, so just a little backstory. We carpool to work, so I drop her off in the morning, and then I drive to my work, and then after I'm done, I go back to her school and then pick her up. So it was a Friday afternoon, and I walk in the door, and the first thing she says to me is, if you think we're ready to go home now, you gotta be kidding. We are never gonna carpool ever again. Whoa, what is going on? And then she said, make yourself useful. Go sit down over there and start grading some papers.
It had been a really rough day. It was the Friday of Mother's Day, and I don't know what you do in your classrooms, but we plant little succulents.
I get yelled at.
We plant little succulents in little clay pots that they paint. It's just a lovely activity, but fourth graders needed a little more help than my sixth graders had, and Matthew's had gotten knocked over. Jaden's had dropped at pickup and cracked up, and it had just been a really rough day. Sorry.
So anyways, I started grading the spelling papers, and there's like 10 words, and I did the first one, it was fine, and then the second paper is like totally different words, and then I started looking at all the papers, and every student had a totally different word, so there's like 10 words per student, and there's 20, how many students you have?
25.
25, there's like 250 different words, and not every word is so easy to spell. Okay, so I wrote some down, and you just tell me if you know what these words mean. All right, so it's on my phone here. We have Halyard. What is that? Well, if you don't know, it's the rope that you use to pull up a rope ladder or something like that. if you go on a sailboat, no, I guess a sailboat wouldn't have that. It'd be more like a clipper ship. So if you had a clipper ship and you needed to, hey, hoist the halyard. And another word was valise. Valise.
It's from Esperanza, rising.
Okay, so I mean, it's not a hard word to spell, but if you don't know what that word is, it's like you don't even know if it's spelled correctly. So it's a small traveling bag.
Mm-hmm.
So basically a backpack. All right. Testator. 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 Don't know if it was misspelled. Got to look that up. So Google comes in handy. It's a person who writes a will.
I think it's the other word form is testament, like last will and testament. I think.
Attorney would come to mind, or a lawyer, yeah, but testator. This other word was Novena, Novena. I mean, it's not hard to spell, but you don't even know if it's spelled correctly or if I'm pronouncing it correctly. So I had to look that up, and it's some Roman Catholic form of worship. Who knew?
My students knew.
Well, okay. So anyways, another word, plate. So I know plate like, dinner plate, Plate, but this is spelled Plait.
Esperanza rising also.
And it's like, what is this word, plate? Well, it's if you take 3 or whatever strands of some cord and you braid it, like hair, it's like a plate. Well, so
plait. I think it's plait.
What? No. What is it?
I think so. It's okay.
Okay, whatever. Plate. Nobody's ever going to use that word.
Yes, they will. It'll show up in their books.
Well, anyway, so I wrote some other words down that the students are spelling. So here I wrote down enthusiastically, chemosynthesis, susceptibility, or susceptible, insurmountable, exasperated, coronation, frivolous, discerning. I totally remember not spelling these words in 4th grade. But it's in the books that they're reading, and it makes them want to know what these words mean. Mm-hmm. And they're totally engaged. Mm-hmm. And it reminded me of, I read this article in the LA Times a couple weeks ago where the author wrote down in a sentence, you remember these things not because you were quizzed on it, but because you thought about it. And that's what's happening.
They're thinking about these words. I think one of my favorite aspects of this program is that there is no difference in the words of my English language learners lists, my developing readers, and my fluent readers lists. You cannot tell the difference. Jacob has a poignantly, frivolous, tentatively, abruptable. Zoe has supplication, dearth. Kevin, I don't even have this word. It starts with pneumonia, something, and it just goes on and on and on. And it is known as the largest word in our language. And he is so proud of this word. He's never going to choose it as a spelling word. He doesn't want to learn how to spell it. He just is so proud that he has the longest word known to us at this time in his composition book, and he's had it for a few weeks. This week he came to me and he said, listen, Mrs. Matsuda, I'm practicing how to say it. And he's, pressing on his phone the pronunciation of this word. They are rising to the challenge of learning new and exciting words, and it's not like there are different levels of complexity. They're all choosing very advanced and engaging words. I'd like to close today with a quote by British linguist David Crystal, who says, vocabulary is a matter of word building as well as word using. So let us work together to help our students build beautiful vocabularies, rich and deep, so that they can use these vocabularies in their language, their writing, and in their reading. We both say thank you for being with us today, and we look forward to seeing you again next week. Be safe until then. Bye-bye.